Hello, you dirty little boys.
So as if Sydney Sweeney's recent fascist American Eagle campaign wasn't enough controversy,
My jeans are blue.
Sydney Sweeney has great jeans.
she decided to circle back and comment on her Dr. Squatch ad campaign with some more rage bait. And did I fall for this rage bait? Absolutely. I am currently making a video essay right now that I spent 4 weeks of research on. So Sydney Sweeney, you might win. Or not. I don't know. You guys can decide at the end of this episode. Anyway, Sydney Sweeney collaborated with Dr. Squatch to release a soap called Sydney's Bathwater Bliss that sold out in seconds after this ad campaign. And there was a lot of controversy around this campaign. Post-fascist American Eagle campaign,
Jeans are passed down from parents to offspring.
she decided to sit down with the Wall Street Journal to discuss why she is the quote-unquote most talked about woman in Hollywood. In this article, she said, "It was mainly the girls making comments about it, which I thought was really interesting. They all loved the idea of Jacob Elordi's bathwater. A lot of women had valid feminist critiques of this ad. And personally, I wasn't necessarily on the side of, oh, Sydney Sweeney's over-sexualizing herself. This is setting back feminism hundreds of thousands of years, First of all, you guys know that I am a former SW. Second of all, there are thousands of women selling their underwear online, so what is the problem with a little bit of fake bathwater in some soap? I'm not necessarily rooting for Sydney Sweeney, a big fan of hers, and especially post-fascist American Eagle ad campaign, I'm definitely not running to her defense. But either way, this sparked a conversation amidst feminists about what's okay to do and what's not okay to do when sexualizing yourself or using your sexuality in ad campaigns. But we're not here to talk about that. We are here to talk specifically about the difference between Sydney Sweeney's bathwater and Jacob Elordi's bathwater, aka Felix's bathwater, that Oliver, aka Barry Keoghan, sucks out of the drain in the movie Saltburn. These two images of bathwater are completely different, but Sydney Sweeney took us there. One is sexy and one is erotic. We're going to talk about the difference between sexy and erotic, and we're also going to talk a little bit about possession. What's up, bitches? Welcome back to So Wet, So Dry. I'm your host, Fiji, like the island, like the water. I can't remember the last time I took a bath. I'm more of a shower girl myself, and I work in social media and marketing, and I also bartend on the side. So if you guys are new here, what I do on So Wet, So Dry is talk about what I'm wet, dry, and generally confused about. Usually I pull a topic from something that is trending in the media, on TikTok, pop culture, a movie, whatever, and analyze it through some feminist analysis, philosophical research, and just general real life. I do post polls on my Instagram story, my personal account at SoWet, S0WET, and at So Wet, So Dry. The O's are zeros, so make sure you are following there so you guys can participate in polls, drop comments, ask questions, suggest episode topics. We are talking about bathwater, but more than that, we are talking about what's sexy and what's erotic. Everyone is sexy and no one is erotic is an essay by Elle Jones that I stumbled upon on Substack. Only then did bathwater become the catalyst for me to expand on her ideas. She writes that we are surrounded by sex but starving our eroticism. And she was actually inspired by another essay called Everyone is Beautiful and No One is Horny by R.S. Benedict. So let's start there. R.S. Benedict writes that modern movies do not have the same intensity and realness in their sex scenes as they do in the 80s and 90s. Back in the 80s and 90s, the actors and actresses' bodies looked more regular, more like the people that we would see in our everyday life. Their sex scenes and relationships had passion and intensity and intimacy and believableness, compared to today where we see actors and actresses with near perfect bodies, only accomplished through 12-step fitness routines and surgery and Botox and BBLs and boob jobs. But amidst all this quote-unquote beauty, the sex just doesn't hit the same way. I know I've definitely felt this in watching modern movies movies and rom-coms specifically, the romances and sex scenes just don't feel believable. They don't feel raw. They don't feel authentic. They feel robotic and empty. She compares this trend to McMansions, which are beautiful, empty homes that feel sterile and unlived in. A body is no longer a holistic system. It is not the vehicle through which we experience joy and pleasure during our brief time in the land of the living. It is not a home to live in and be happy. It too is a collection of features: six-pack, thigh gap, cum gutters. And these features exist not to make our lives more comfortable, but to increase the value of our assets. Our bodies are investments, which must always be optimized to bring us what exactly? Some vague sense of better living? Is life without bread objectively better than a life with it? When we were children, did we dream of counting every calorie and logging every step? Now we are perfect islands of emotional self-reliance, and it is seen as embarrassing and codependent to want to be touched. We are doing this for ourselves because we, apropos of nothing, desperately want to achieve a physical standard set by some invisible other in an insurance office somewhere. There is no promise of intimacy. When a body receives fewer calories, it must prioritize essential life support systems over any function not strictly necessary for the body's immediate survival. Sexual desire falls into the latter category, as does high-level abstract thought. A body that restricts food and increases exercise believes it is undergoing a famine, which is not an ideal time to reproduce. Is there anything more cruelly puritanical than enshrining a sexual ideal that leaves a person unable to enjoy sex? Elle Jones builds off of these ideas in her essay. She recounts her 10-step plus beauty routine and how unerotic it makes her feel after completing it. But yet there's so much societal pressure to do this. She writes, "We are not short of sex, we are short of sexuality, and puritanical backlash is inevitable when we see all of the pornography with none of the intimacy that real life sex embodies. The distinction is hard to make on an internet where black and white takes are the way to virality. But I'm not moralizing against sex in popular culture. I'm lamenting a culture where the idea of sexiness is the goal of a project of endless self-cultivation that doesn't have a clear reward. Your capacity to groom and preen yourself to oblivion has absolutely no bearing on the quality of your romantic and sexual relationships, and may even damage them." Both Elle Jones and R.S. Benedict focus on our culture of constant self-improvement and beautification as barriers standing between our ability to experience true erotic pleasure. We're too focused on being sexy that we have lost the erotic. But what is the difference between sexy and erotic? First off, I asked you guys if there is a difference between sexy and erotic. 91% of you guys said yes, and 9% said no. So clearly we know that there's a difference. And one listener said, "Erotic evokes a desire for sex. It feels more lustful. Sexy feels more playful and tantalizing. I feel more authentic being sexy. I feel like sexy can show up in different ways. I still look back on my teens and early 20s with shame for promoting myself as erotic." And I find this comment really, really interesting. Of course, whatever makes you feel sexy, erotic, empowered, whatever is good, and you should do that. But I would argue something different in this episode, and it has a lot to do with that shame factor. I think it's really interesting that this listener says that they felt more in touch with their erotic side when they were in their teens and early 20s, kind of before society really shapes how you should operate in the world in terms of your sexuality. To me, the erotic feels much more carnal and raw, versus sexy is much more sophisticated, cleaned up, market ready, alluring. But what does sexy really mean? So of course, we're going to take it to Merriam-Webster, and she says, "Sexy is an adjective. It means sexually suggestive or stimulating, generally attractive or interesting." So sexy is suggesting, it's simulating, it's not quite doing, but it's provoking, it's winking, it's nodding, it's throwing the side of your top off your shoulder. In her Dr. Squatch ad, Sydney Sweeney is sexy. She's speaking in a low, sultry tone as she teases the male viewer about their uncleanliness and how she can fix it with her soap. And we see a lot of this sexiness online and in ads as well, where women, and it's generally women, are dancing, posing, making facial expressions at the camera that is suggesting sex. But yet it feels so empty. Maybe because we have become so accustomed to it, because it is literally everywhere. The erotic is different though. It has a pulse. It's much more carnal and raw and thirsty. Merriam-Webster says the definition of erotic is of devoted to or tending to arouse sexual love or desire, strongly marked or affected by sexual desire. And though erotic is an adjective too, sexy is again suggesting or simulating. Erotic is of, devoted to, or tending to. With the erotic, it feels deeper. It feels unignorable. With sexy, it's a wink. With erotic, it's a deep, yearning cry. Sexy feels like it's in the eyes, but erotic feels like it's deep in your gut. And the root word of erotic is eros, meaning love, which Plato described as a fundamental creative impulse, often having a sensual element. Eros is also the Greek name for the god Cupid. We all know baby Cupid and how he comes around on Valentine's Day with his little bow and arrow. And I did, in fact, go down an entire rabbit hole of research on Eros himself that I'm not going to entirely get into in this episode because it is too much. But essentially, Eros Cupid was not always depicted as a baby. That actually came later once cultures got more misogynistic because Eros was someone who was generally directed by his mother, Aphrodite, and men at the time saw that as weak and infantilizing, so they made him a chubby little baby. But he used to be a very strong, beautiful, winged man, and his arrows have gold tips, which will make people fall dangerously, erotically, madly in love with someone, or lead tips, which will make someone completely indifferent to someone. And Cupid actually shot himself with his own arrow on accident and fell in love with Psyche. That's a whole other little myth you guys should look into. I'm hyper fixated on it right now. But anyway, because eroticism comes from the root word Eros, which comes from the Greek god who had the ability to make people fall in love, there was always a madness to this. So when we think about the erotic and eroticism, we do kind of have to think about love and madness. Many a philosopher has also written about eroticism, but I decided to read Eroticism, Death, and Sensuality by Georges Bataille. I'm going to bring it back to the bathwater, guys, I promise. Bataille's theory of eroticism adds another layer. To him, eroticism is grotesque, painful, violent, and beautiful all in one. He explains that as humans, we live a discontinuous life. This can also be thought of as existential loneliness. In this life of discontinuity or existential loneliness, we are constantly searching for a state of continuity that will make us feel whole again. However, this continuity can't really be found until death. So in some ways, you can relate his theory to Freud's theory of the death wish, because Bataille talks a lot about self-annihilation. Quote, "We are discontinuous beings, individuals who perish in isolation in the midst of an incomprehensible adventure, but we yearn for our lost continuity. We find the state of affairs that binds us to our random and ephemeral individuality hard to bear." He explains that there are three different types of eroticism: physical, emotional, and religious. And all of these different forms of eroticism are used to kind of cope with our desire for continuity or cope with dealing with our state of discontinuity. And when we experience eroticism, we experience a sort of psychological ecstasy. Like for a moment, we are near continuity with another person, another being, a god, etc. He says eroticism, unlike simple sexual activity, is a psychological quest independent of the natural goal, reproduction and the desire for children. Eroticism is assenting to life even in death. The orgasm is also known as the little death, la petite mort. And Bataille talks about this, how when we experience that eroticism, that moment of ecstasy, we almost transcend death and meet continuity, but it's fleeting. But for Bataille, these fleeting moments of continuity or transcendence are born from transgression. He sees eroticism as excess, and he points out that a lot of eroticism is performed with the body's sewers, our genitalia. Bataille believes eroticism is excess because it is not useful. It doesn't focus on reproduction or efficiency. Instead, it's an experience of expenditure without return, the opposite of work. And that is why it is taboo. Work is necessary to keep society running. Eroticism is not. In fact, if people were constantly consumed in erotic desire and pleasure, they would not be able to work. So thus, structures of shame were built around the erotic to prevent us from falling into erotic pleasures constantly and keep us working. Bataille believes eroticism to be violent. It is a very violent feeling to go through that death, to try to transcend discontinuity to continuity. He believes all of society's taboos are created to combat violence. But he also believes work to be a different type of violence. He says, the world of work and reason is the basis of human life, but work does not absorb us completely, and if reason gives the orders, our obedience is never unlimited. Man has built up the rational world by his own efforts, but there remains within him an undercurrent of violence. Nature herself is violent, and however reasonable we may grow, we may be mastered anew by a violence no longer that of nature, but that of a rational being who tries to obey, but who succumbs to the stirring within himself, which he cannot bring to heal. In essence, the domain of eroticism is the domain of violence, of violation. The whole business of eroticism is to strike to the inmost core of the living being, so that the heart stands still. The transition from the normal state to that of erotic desire presupposes a partial dissolution of the person as he exists in the realm of continuity. The whole business of eroticism is to destroy the self-contained character of the participators as they are in their normal lives. Eroticism always entails a breaking down of established patterns, the patterns of the regulated social order basic to our discontinuous mode of existence as defined in separate individuals. Now, guys, I just want to say that I love Bataille's concepts, most of them for the most part. I'll talk a little bit more about that at the end, but I despise the way that he writes. I hate it. I don't know if it's because it's translated from French or what, but he writes in a super confusing way. So I tried to pick quotes that I thought were the most digestible and made the most sense, but his sentence structure fucking sucks. But you get where he's going, right? Eroticism is violence. It is kind of our animal nature, but he makes a clear distinction between us and animals. But it is driving us to this sort of like madness that is outside of society's order. And that is why it is taboo. So this madness and erotic desire is where we get to Saltburn, and we're bringing back the bathwater, guys. So let's talk about the movie Saltburn. So Saltburn was also a little bit controversial. Some people loved it and some people fucking hated it. And if you hated it, I beg you to watch through the rest of this episode because I think you might like it a little bit more with this interpretation. The first time I watched it, I genuinely liked it. I thought it was a beautiful movie on film. I really liked those kind of intense, erotic, disgusting moments that a lot of people were saying was just for shock factor or whatever. I liked those moments. I thought there was a lot of good symbolism. I don't know if I necessarily understood the movie completely the first time that I watched it, but I did like it. But a lot of people strongly criticized the movie. It has gotten accusations of simply being an aesthetic Tumblr movie. People said that it didn't really have a plot that made sense. People said that it ripped off The Talented Mr. Ripley. And a lot of people saw it as like an eat the rich movie commentary on classism and class and all of that stuff, and were therefore disappointed in it because of the ending where, spoiler guys, but all of the rich people die and weren't even really that awful, but he's not even lower class, the middle class person, Oliver, who ends up at Saltburn, is happy and just like gets away with it all. So they're like, what's the point? He's kind of painted as this like psychopath sort of thing. And like, what does that have to say? Whatever. I get it, guys, but bear with me. So if you guys haven't seen the movie, I'm just going to do a speedy recap. All right. So Oliver, nerdy kid, goes to Oxford, meets Felix. Felix is popular. He's rich. He gets all the girls. Oliver becomes infatuated with him. They ultimately become friends. Felix invites Oliver to his home, Saltburn. Oliver then goes to his home at Saltburn, this beautiful, gorgeous, rich mansion where Oliver is meant to spend the summer with Felix as the two have become close. But once Oliver arrives at this mansion, things take a turn for the worse, the crazy, the erotic, the insane. At Saltburn lives Felix's parents, their aunt-cousin situation, Farley, Felix's cousin, and Venetia, Felix's sister. So Oliver watches Felix in the famous bathtub scene where Felix is masturbating in the bathtub, and then once he leaves, Oliver goes into the bathtub and sucks up all of that cum-filled bath water. Oliver seduces Felix's sister Venetia and eats her pussy when she's on her period blood everywhere. Then Farley, Felix's cousin, sees Oliver and Venetia together and tells Felix. Felix is upset, almost turns on Oliver. Oliver is like, nah, Venetia, we can't do this anymore. And then Oliver then threatens Farley in a questionably SA situation. And this is where we start to see Oliver become much more violent and sinister as his obsession and his madness is taking control. But the parents still love Oliver and they want to throw him a big birthday party. So they're planning this big birthday party. But first, Felix takes Oliver on a surprise trip to meet Oliver's parents, which Oliver told Felix were poor junkies, but they are not, in fact, poor junkies. They are middle class, very loving parents. And Felix is obviously super betrayed by this because he's like, why did you lie to me? And Oliver is upset about it, whatever. They have the whole party, ultimately kills him. Then we get the funeral. Oliver fucking Felix's grave. Oliver insinuates that it was Farley's drugs that killed Felix, so Farley is kicked out of the house. Venetia proceeds to unalive herself in the bathtub. And then the parents are like, Oliver, why are you still here? So Oliver leaves, only later for Oliver to find out that the father has passed away. So he meets up with the mother on a chance encounter in a coffee shop, and she invites him back to Saltburn, where he stays there, takes care of her as she's dying, but ultimately kills her, and then takes the whole Saltburn inheritance and house and everything for himself, where he is dancing around in it naked happily after everyone is dead. But the catch is, all of these little things were planned by Oliver. Throughout the movie, we are led to have some sort of empathy or understanding for Oliver because he is not rich. He doesn't come from this wealthy background. He's not as cool as Felix and Venetia and all of these people, but he really wants that, right? But then we find out that he's actually just a criminal fucking mastermind psychopath, and he's planned this entire thing. Everything from meeting Felix in the first place. He even placed the razor blades by Venetia's bathtub so that she would kill herself and then kill the mother, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So this is the problem that a lot of people have with the movie, because they're like, okay, if this is a commentary about class, then why would you make the lower class, middle class person a psychopath and make the rich people the victims? That doesn't really make any sense. But bear with me. Let's start with the bathtub, because this entire insane movie was actually born from the bathtub. The director, writer, and producer of the movie Saltburn said the whole plot all started with the image of someone licking the bathtub plug hole. Fennell says, a film idea usually starts with me as a flash of something visual. The film started 7 or 8 years ago with an image of someone licking the bottom of a bathtub. You know everything from that image. That's about somebody wanting something they can't have. When we're in the grip of a really intense desire, I don't think licking the bottom of a bathtub feels that transgressive. Desire is not all candles and jazz. It can be more sinister. It goes on to say, it was the opening line of the movie. I didn't know that that's what it was then, but it was a young man saying I wasn't in love with him, and then that same young man licking the bottom of the bathtub. For me, it was immediately clear that's what the movie was. What I found really interesting is that I didn't write anything in Saltburn to be shocking. I wrote it because I wanted to make an incredibly sexy film about desire and what that looks like and feels like. Here we have sexy appear again, but I would argue that this movie isn't really sexy. It's entirely erotic. And she also mentioned the word transgressive, saying that it's not really super transgressive for someone to do this in the grips of desire. In the grips of desire is important because for Bataille, once you have crossed that transgression in erotic desire, everything is open field. Born from this idea of not quite being in love, but having an intense desire or obsession, description, the film showcases the violence, humiliation, and transgressive nature of erotic desire in key scene after key scene. When Oliver watches Felix masturbate and sucks up his cum-filled bathwater, he is in a mad state of erotic desire. Squishing his face on the cold bathtub floor, he is worshiping Felix's bathwater as sacred, channeling his yearning into action as he tries to reach the ecstasy of continuity by sucking it up. When he confronts Venetia about her eating disorder, then proceeds to seduce her and lick up her period blood, he is transgressing a taboo Bataille mentions in his book. Menstrual blood is seen as taboo because it is excess. In fact, the entire family lives in a state of excess as they are so wealthy, work isn't necessary to them. For Bataille, the sacred is the realm outside of utility, a place of waste, transgression, and awe, no work. So Saltburn itself is inherently sacred, and Oliver is clearly having a field day over this whole thing. When Oliver murders Felix, he commits the ultimate transgression, murder, which Bataille sees as symbolically erotic because of its connection to death, continuity, and discontinuity. Felix is sacrificed so Oliver can attempt to reach a final state of continuity, but he doesn't, and so he sobs and performs another mad ritual of erotic desire by fucking his grave, ashamed at what he's done and lost, but also so desperate to experience that transcendent state of continuity with Felix. Erotic scene after erotic scene until we end with Oliver in a state of naked, blissful madness, as he's dancing around Saltburn, which is the ritual site where he has committed multiple human sacrifices in order to reach continuity. In the final scene, Oliver has absorbed Felix and his family through sex, blood, and death, and he has merged with them. His dance is both a victory and dissolution. He is not just Oliver anymore, but the living embodiment of Saltburn's sacred excess. And Bataille was big on sacrifice, right? That's why he talked about religious eroticism. People used to make human sacrifices, animal sacrifices, all of those things to get closer to God. In these rituals and sacrifices, they reach this state of transcendence and ecstasy that Bataille states is exactly eroticism. Saltburn is about obsession and desire, specifically erotic desire, wanting something so bad that you need to consume it. It's about madness and how the desire to consume something that you are obsessed with ends up consuming you as well. So is this movie morally just? No, that's where the critics are right. But I don't think that it's meant to be. This movie isn't meant to be a moral fable. Instead, it is a ritual of excess, showing how desire pushes beyond the limits of social order and restraint. In an interview with The Wrap, Emerald Fennell talks about this restraint. The interviewer says, "You mentioned Oliver drinking Felix's bathwater, and there are other scenes, like the garden hookup, that are not graphic in terms of what we see, but they do test some people's comfort." She says, "What's really funny is that this is a film about desire, about restraint and the limits of restraint. Why restraint is so dangerous. Why not being able to touch the thing you want to touch can drive you mad as a human. Whether or not you're going to lick a bathtub or suck the dirty water out of a drain. Metaphorically, we've all done tawdy, embarrassing things in the grip of desire. None of this is remotely shocking compared to the stuff that we grew up with, the way that women's bodies were used in film. And the thing is, when you're writing these things, you have to interrogate yourself, and you're in quite a vulnerable place, because what we're saying is, I think this is sexy and interesting and truthful. I think what's a bit troubling is we're not used to people showing us things that are sexy that make us feel uncomfortable. And therefore people are inclined to say, oh, it's grossed out, it's provocative. All the people who are shocked by it, I just wonder what they're looking up on the internet at 3 a.m. I mean, come on. And again, we have the word sexy showing up again, but I don't think this movie is sexy. I think it is erotic. And because she talks about restraint and desire, I feel like sexy is the most accessible term for her to go to. But again, sexy is suggesting or simulating. Erotic is of. And this movie is very much of that desire and of those limits of restraint. To demand a moral takeaway from Saltburn is to miss the point. This movie isn't an argument, it's an eruption. But if there is a moral takeaway from this movie, then I think it has to do with the madness of erotic desire, and allowing that madness of erotic desire to drive you to a state of bloodthirsty possession or the need to consume. Now, we are going to talk about possession and consumption, but first, I want to go back to Sydney Sweeney's bathtub and talk about marketing. We've probably all heard the phrase sex sells. And if you guys listen loyally or you paid attention to the beginning of this episode, then you know that I work in marketing. And I wouldn't necessarily say that I have a passion for marketing as much as they were the only copywriting jobs available that I could use my English degree for when I decided that I was sick of working in restaurants and wanted to get a big girl work from home job. My first marketing job was in 2021 and I was writing for a digital marketing agency. I was writing landing pages, social media posts, blogs, case studies, solution briefs, ebooks, all sorts of copy for a variety of companies, from roofing tools to restaurants to HR to software to luxury apartments, all sorts of random shit. From there, I started working for a boxing gym, boxing and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu gym, where I was a marketing content creator and then became a marketing manager. And from there, I went to my current company, which is a tech company, and I do the copywriting here as well. So same sorts of stuff, social media, website, landing pages, ebooks, blah, 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 blah. And when I first started working in marketing, I definitely had imposter syndrome. Despite having an English degree, I knew how to write poetry and an academic essay analyzing a piece of literature, but I did not know how to SEO optimize a blog article or write a pithy catchphrase that was pointing you to a CTA, which is call to action, getting you to buy something. That I'm not very good at. Like short phrases and like poetry and stuff, things that are like deep and meaningful, I'm pretty good at, but like short little like catchy phrases, I just feel like it's all so corny, but I still have to do it. So anyway, during this time, it was very beginning of 2021, which was, end of the pandemic, mid-pandemic kind of, which was really the side hustle era. And because I had imposter syndrome and I am still kind of a girl boss, I feel like that culture is just ingrained in me. I felt like I needed to do a shit ton of research so that I knew what I was talking about in meetings and all of that stuff. So I watched a shit ton of YouTube videos. I read a bunch of books, watched a bunch of TikToks all about digital marketing, copywriting, etc. And thankfully, because of the era, there was a shit ton of content about how to build an email list, how to build a funnel, how to get people to download an ebook, how to blah, 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 blah. So it was kind of like the perfect timing for me. And I know a lot of people who went to art school or have English degrees similar to me that just ended up in marketing because it just kind of makes sense. It's a creative enough field and it pays your bills, but it's not exactly fulfilling. That's why I do this, guys. And I genuinely don't hate it. I think I am grateful for all that it has taught me about the internet and how ads work and all of that stuff. And yes, your phone is listening to you, not necessarily like listening, but every ad that you click on, everything is completely tracked. And I know because the company that I work for, we track those things and make content based off of user behaviors. So like all of that worldview has helped me a lot. Also, obviously, creating my own business, I like to think sometimes that I'm putting my marketing background to use, but I'm going to be real, guys. Like that's why I feel like I haven't grown this audience enough, because I really don't put fucking anything into marketing. I just create the content because I'm so sick of marketing all day that I don't want to write the stupid catchphrases and ads and blah, 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 blah to try to get people to click on it. I'm like, if they want to, they would. If they want to, they will. Because all of that sort of content, I feel like has no soul, right? Like it's all trying to get you to buy something. And I want the content or art that I create to have a soul. Again, not against marketing in general. Businesses need to run, and marketing, I think, is crucial, but we take it too fucking far. We just take it too far. Marketers are like manipulators. Marketers are truly manipulators. But anyway, in all my years of marketing, no matter what company I was working for or what client I was working with, the direction was always to make it sexy because sex sells, right? I can't tell you how many times I've been told to write a piece of content like a striptease. I'm not kidding. Like, I'm not kidding. Corporate men in meetings telling me, a young 27-year-old woman, to write this piece of content like a striptease, obviously metaphorically, right? And I have dealt with, countless amounts of sexism in the industry. I've been sent to trade shows where, I thought I was just going as a young professional, but I probably wasn't really qualified to be there. Someone else should have been there in my place. Instead, I was sent there to be a booth babe because sex sells and I'm an attractive young woman. So I needed to sign people into the booth. And you know what? Fuck it, whatever, guys. Again, I got into this after working in restaurants for years and stripping. So I have literally stripped naked for money. I'm not that offended by someone telling me to write a piece of content like a striptease. Like, it's just like, I get that sex sells, So I'm not puritanical in that way, but it is exhausting. I even had one boss literally run an ad campaign called Hot Babes, like literally labeled Hot Babes in Google Ads, where there were pictures of attractive women in whatever field we were selling to with words like future-proof your workplace or something next to it. Like, insane. But like, his whole belief was like, oh, if there's an attractive woman next to it, it'll sell. Like, it is like, the advertising marketing industry is so fucking exhausting. And I've gotten a lot better at like telling these men that these ideas are stupid, but you can only go so far. And I don't get paid enough to argue back and forth. It's not my company. Sometimes I just want to get it done. But using sex and sexiness to sell a product makes sense, right? Especially if we go back to Bataille and talk about taboos and transgressions, right? Like, he believes that eroticism is taboo because it is counter to work. Work keeps social order. Eroticism is excess. So excess is things that you don't need, but you want, right? Sex is taboo. It's alluring. It's enticing. If people use sex and sexiness to sell you something, it is to evoke an emotion, a feeling, a desire within you so that you want to purchase this taboo thing. You want to make the transgressive act so that you can potentially reach a state of continuity. As insane as that sounds, it really is kind of that deep because all of marketing is psychological tricks and we are manipulating you. But it's that idea, right? That like, if you buy this thing, you will transcend your current state of existential loneliness or terror or whatever and spend your money on this bar of soap. And maybe you work a minimum wage job and maybe this bar of soap is $8. I don't know how much the Dr. Squatch Sweeney soap is, but maybe that's an entire hour of your salary that you could have spent on your groceries because groceries are so fucking expensive. But no, you want this specific expensive soap because it makes you feel something. It makes you feel something fucking deeper. And that's what we all want because we live in a capitalistic world of work. And that is what Sydney Sweeney's ad does well, right? It is sexy. It is making sex sell in the perfect marketing sense. Sydney Sweeney is doing the striptease.
Hello, you dirty little boys. Are you interested in my body?
She is addressing a pain point of lack in her audience.
Well, you can't have it. Because this isn't for boys, it's for men.
She flaunts the solution to their problem.
And real men don't use cheap commercial body washes labeled by the FDA as a synthetic cleanser.
And then she urges them to buy the problem away.
But this is Dr. Squatch Natural Body Wash. It uses our real soap formula with ingredients from Mother Nature herself. So go to drsquatch.com today and quit being a dirty little boy.
And it worked. Her soap sold out in seconds. But what did it leave the buyers with? Well, possession of the soap. They possessed it. They owned it. So let's talk about possession. So I read another book called The Agony of Eros by Byung-Chul Han, and he is a modern philosopher. This book was written in the 2010s, so it is pretty new. He talks about social media and all of that stuff, which is refreshing after reading Bataille. But this book is a really short collection of essays. It's only like 57 pages long, so I really recommend you guys check it out. But I am going to read some quotes from his book. They are rather long, so bear with me, but I think that they are really important to a broader understanding of eroticism and Eros. And Eros also, of course, means love, so we do have to factor that in when we're talking about eroticism. But these philosophies and theories that he talks about complement the work of Bataille and kind of build off of Bataille's work as well. He says, Eros is a relationship to the other situated beyond achievement, performance, and ability. Being able to not be able represents its negative counterpart, the negativity of otherness, that is, the atopia of the other, which eludes all ability, is constitutive of erotic experience. The other bears alterity as an essence, and this is why we have sought this alterity in the absolutely original relationship of Eros, a relationship that is impossible to translate into powers. Absolutizing ability is precisely what annihilates the other. A successful relationship with the other finds expression as a kind of failure. Only by way of being able to not be able does the other appear. Can this relationship with the other through Eros be characterized as a failure? Once again, the answer is yes, if one adopts the terminology of current descriptions. If one wants to characterize the erotic by grasping, possessing, or knowing. But there is nothing of all this or the failure of all this in Eros. If one could possess, grasp, or know the other, it would not be the other. Possessing, knowing, and grasping are synonyms of power. Today, love is being positized into sexuality, and by the same token, subjected to a commandment to perform. Sex means achievement and performance, and sexiness represents capital to be increased. The body, with its display of value, has become a commodity. At the same time, the other is being sexualized into an object for procuring arousal. When otherness is stripped from the other, one cannot love, one can only consume. And then he kind of talks about this culture of like toxic positivity that we live in, right? Like I've heard this talked about like a lot with like workspaces, and I've heard my mom talk about it too back when she was a teacher, about how everyone just wants to be like so positive, like nothing's wrong, like everybody be happy, like corporate culture, like company culture, like school culture, like like everything's good, everything's fine. But by doing that, we don't pay attention to things that are actually wrong or don't give space to the negative. And the negative is necessary in order to have a positive, right? And so when he's talking about the experience of Eros as eroticism or love and not being able to completely like know the other, possess or grasp the other, that is part of the beauty in it, right? Because Bataille sees eroticism as like going after this state of continuity. We want to transcend this state of discontinuity, existential loneliness by merging with the other. But that is, in fact, impossible. That's why we only get that feeling in fleeting moments. And so to Han, to possess the other is kind of like the violence that Bataille is talking about, like this extended state of actual violence. Because a lot of what Bataille is talking about, the violence of eroticism, is like the feeling that we get, how like love and eroticism is like tragic and like painful as well. And I'm going to read some quotes from him on that. Bataille says, "We ought never to forget that in spite of the bliss love promises, its first effect is one of turmoil and distress. Passion fulfilled itself provokes such violent agitation that the happiness involved, before being a happiness to be enjoyed, is so great as to be more like its opposite, suffering. Its essence is to substitute for their persistent discontinuity a miraculous continuity between two beings. Yet this continuity is chiefly to be felt in the anguish of desire. When it is still inaccessible, still impotent, quivering, quivering yearning. A tranquil feeling of secure happiness can only mean the calm which follows the long storm of suffering. For it is more likely that lovers will not meet in such timeless fusion than that they will. The chances are most often against their contemplating in speechless wonder the continuity that unites them. He goes on to say, the likelihood of suffering is all the greater since suffering alone reveals the total significance of the beloved object. Possession of the beloved object does not imply death, but the idea of death is linked with the urge to possess. If the lover cannot possess the beloved, he will sometimes think of killing her. Often he would rather kill her than lose her, or else he may wish to die himself. Between these frenzied notions is the glimpse of a continuity possible through the beloved. Once the beloved, so it seems to the lover, because of the affinities evading definition which match the union of bodies with that of the soul, only the beloved can in this world bring what our human limitations deny, a total blending of two beings, a continuity between two discontinuous creatures. Hence, love spells suffering for us insofar as it is a quest for the impossible, and at a lower level, a quest for union at the mercy of circumstance. Yet, it promises a way out of suffering. We suffer from our isolation, our individual separateness. Love reiterates, if only you possess the beloved one, your soul sick with loneliness, would you become one with the soul of the beloved. So Bataille is really outlining that violence that exists within us, right? And, he says that a lover might wish to kill their lover before like losing them and all of that stuff. Like, let's think about that metaphorically. Like, obviously we do not condone like partner on partner violence, like any violence or anything like that. But like, like the feeling like we can relate to, or like, going through heartbreak and feeling like there's like no reason to live anymore. Like all of it is like incredibly dramatic. And so is like the spirit of eroticism, like that craving, that desire, that obsession, that like thirstiness that we see in Saltburn, like all of that Oliver is going through towards Felix. And even he says, like, I'm not sure that I was in love with him, but part of me like questions that. Is he reliable? Maybe he wasn't in love with him, but he was infatuated with him. He was lusting after him. He desired him. He desired him so much that he wanted to consume him and everything around him, to become one with him. And ultimately he did become one with Saltburn by consuming all of its excess and all of the people around it. But what was he left with? Naked, mad loneliness. In the Agony of Eros, Han says, today more and more matters of maintaining distance are disappearing. That is, the ability to experience the other in terms of his or her otherness is being lost. By means of social media, we seek to bring the other as near as possible, to close any distance between ourselves and him or her, to create proximity. But this does not mean that we have more of the other. Instead, we are making the other disappear. Nearness is negative insofar as remoteness is inscribed within it. But now a total abolition of remoteness is underway. This does not produce nearness so much as it abolishes it. Instead of closeness, it entails crowding. Nearness acts negatively. Therefore, it is inhabited by tension. In contrast, crowding acts positively. The power of negativity lies in the fact that things are enlivened precisely by their opposite. Mere positivity lacks any such power to animate. Today, love is being positivized into a formula for enjoyment. Above all, love is supposed to generate pleasant feelings. It no longer represents plot, narration, or drama, only inconsequential emotion and arousal. It is free from the negativity of injury, assault, or crashing. To fall in love would already be too negative. Yet it is precisely such negativity that constitutes love. Love is not possibility, is not due to our initiative, is without reason. It evades, it wounds us. Achievement society, which is dominated by ability, where everything is possible and everything occurs as an initiative and project, has no access to love as something that wounds or incites passion. And I think Han has such a good point when he's talking about this lack of space or like distance between us and the other, whoever that other is, a romantic partner, someone you have a crush on, like whatever. Like, it is so easy for us to track their every movement on social media and all of those things. Like, you can look at their Instagram, their Twitter, their TikTok, their fucking Spotify, their whatever. By us not understanding the importance of letting the other, another person, an object of our desire, be in their own right who they are without trying to merge with them or consume them, then it's the same thing with products as well, right? Like we can just like 2 clicks buy something on Amazon and it will arrive to us. We can buy something on TikTok Shop, whatever. There's no waiting, longing, or like yearning for things, which is funny because there's so many people online right now that are making me, I love the yearning memes, that are making memes about yearning and like longing, because we still have this feeling of like existential dread and yearning and longing. But simultaneously, the society that we live in is constantly reminding us that like, oh no, you can have everything that you want and it can be instant. You can make this purchase instantly and it will arrive in 2 days, or you can instantly check and see what your ex is doing or what your crush is doing. There is no moment to sit in yearning and longing and consideration for another person's like complete selfness. Instead, it's constant like the next thing to like purchase, own, buy, possess, become one with. And because of that, I think we miss out even further on those opportunities of continuity, of like transcendence, right? Because like every little quick fix of transcendence doesn't feel like anything anymore, you know? And it's really in those fleeting moments of like longing and like actual genuine like connection with someone where we get that feeling of continuity, whether it's fleeting, and it's continuity, but again, we can never achieve it and we can never stay in it, but we are so uncomfortable with that because I think in a lot of like fucked up ways, especially in Western American society, a lot of us are like very comfortable with having access to what we want relatively like easily in marketing and with social media and this culture and everything like that. That's like what's driving it, right? Everything is sexy. It's alluring. It's kind of like capitalizing off of that existential dread that you have, that yearning for something deeper to transcend, to merge with a state of continuity. Again, like sexiness is a facade. Like it is a facade. That doesn't mean it always has a come down, right? Because I think that there's sexiness that can lead you to a state of eroticism and transcendent bliss where you get the fleeting moment of continuity. But I think sexiness is much more of a like trick or a tactic or a manipulation. And this is what Sydney Sweeney is doing with her Dr. Squatch Bathwater soap. She is promising ecstasy in possession of this soap. Little dirty boys won't be little dirty boys anymore. They will become men, all with just however many dollars it is. You can purchase and possess this soap and transcend boyhood into manhood. So when Sydney Sweeney compares her bathwater to Jacob Elordi's, I don't think that they are the same at all. Jacob Elordi's bathwater isn't sexy in the way that Sydney Sweeney's is. It is not trying to get you to do something. In fact, Jacob Elordi is just having a moment of solitude, being the other, masturbating in the bath as many of us do. Saltburn is from the perspective of someone experiencing all the violent emotions of the erotic. Sydney Sweeney's bathwater is simply sexy and available for purchase at a store near you. Sexiness is used to sell and can be bought. Eroticism, I don't think eroticism can. I think eroticism is deeper than that. The eroticism that is in Saltburn, where he's madly going fucking insane, killing people, fucking people, tricking people, getting naked, dancing, fucking graves, sucking up water in the drain, drinking blood, That is all eroticism. That is all erotic. It is yearning. It is desire. It is longing. It is wanting to consume something. It is wanting to possess something. Oliver is on a mad journey to possess Saltburn and Felix and everything in it. Oliver is us when we are in a relationship and we become so obsessively jealous that we start questioning telling our partner about everything that they did the other day with their friends, when we start going through their phones, when we start checking locations. Oliver is us when we go on a midnight shopping spree to buy a bunch of shit on TikTok that we don't need because we think that it's going to fulfill us. All of these acts are acts of violence against the other in which we are trying to possess something instead of just like letting things be, instead of just like letting the other exist, whether that's like a person or an object, and sitting with it. We can't sit with it. We need to consume it. We need to chase after it. We need to bloodthirstily acquire it, get it. In a lot of ways, Oliver is the buyer of Sydney Sweeney's bathwater. We are surrounded by sexiness and excess at every corner. There's so much that we could buy that we don't necessarily need, and there's so much information to look at that does not matter. And in a lot of ways, this feels like Oliver at Saltburn, where there's so much excess, so many riches, so many beautiful people, so many potential erotic encounters. He was only able to make it to Saltburn through deceptive, difficult, evil, lying work. Similar to us today, capitalism is a fucked up thing, and you could buy anything you want, but how much are you going to have to work and kill yourself for it? But both are violence, right? Different types of violence. If anything, I think we should be holding more space for the violence of not being able to possess, the violence that exists within our human animal nature of feeling these feelings of wanting continuity, not wanting to experience existential dread, but not falling to the madness at our fingertips, not falling into the desire to consume and possess, no matter how hard Sydney Sweeney tries to get you to. So I think that we know the difference between sexy and erotic now, and Sydney Sweeney's bathwater and Jacob Elordi's. Jacob Elordi's bathwater is used in Saltburn as a symbol and art. Sydney Sweeney's is used in marketing as an ad. Sexy is different than erotic. But before we wrap up, I want to be clear. I am not against using sexiness to sell things, sexiness in marketing. I think if done correctly and well, it can be good. It's just so oversaturated. I also want to be very clear that I am not against sex work or women using their sexuality to make a bag. I understand that based off of like some of the conversations in this episode and equating sex or eroticism to like sacredness and talking about Bataille and all of that, like some people could walk away with sex work equals bad. Please don't do that. I have a billion other fucking episodes about sex work and sexuality and the media and my feelings on all of that. Even the Sabrina Carpenter episode, please watch that one and think critically. This conversation is nuanced, and I want us to be able to come to a place of nuance and conversation in it without completely labeling things as black or white, and without getting too much into the whole sex work angle of things and like women using their sexuality. Again, like I'm not trying to defend Sydney Sweeney, like she is fascist adjacent, but had this been like a different woman in this ad, I would be, backing her up on it, still questioning some of it. But I am ultimately for women using their sexuality in ads when they want to, or doing sex work or stripping or fucking whatever. The only thing I want to say about that is this, without making this episode too much about that. For me, as a former stripper and sex worker, the way that I always thought about it and what would always piss me the fuck off, and I think this ties into what Han says in the Agony of Eros and the other and everything, is that so often we look at women who may be in some ways objectifying themselves because they are using the object of their sexuality to sell something, and then we strip them of their humanity completely, especially in sex work and stripping and those sorts of things, in which it is kind of like a two-person thing. It is a woman providing a service, and also in an ad, it is a woman working in an ad. It is a woman reading a script. It is a woman acting. It is a woman stripping, it is a woman giving a lap dance. A man, a viewer of the ad, whatever, the man is exchanging money for a service. You are viewing a performance when you're watching an ad or whatever. So I just wish people would remember that instead of being like, oh, you're selling your body, like this is stripping you of your humanity. No, you who are saying that is actually what is stripping that woman of her humanity and her agency, because she knows the role that she signed up for, right? When I went to work at the strip club, I knew the job that I was doing. I was engaging in an act in which I am giving a performance or I am giving a service to a man who is paying me to do this for him. There is the object of a financial transaction involved. Not to say that every man that goes into a strip club or watches the ad and purchases the soap or whatever will believe that this is a service and respect the woman as such. That's a whole different object of the game. But I think if we can look at it more as work and look at it more as a service, we can stop dehumanizing women who use their sexuality for some sort of profit. And I think, unfortunately, a lot of feminist discourse that talks about sexuality does that on accident without meaning to. Like, they think they have the best intentions, but then ultimately like strip a woman of her humanity even fucking more. So I want to be clear on that. Like, please acknowledge the humanity of the person performing the work. Just like a masseuse is not simply their hands. They are not selling the body part of their hands to you. They are selling the service. You are engaging with another human being. Similar to service workers, I'm a bartender. Treat me like a human being when I am making your drink and taking your order. I am not a robot. And on that note, I just want to bring in a quote from Gail S. Rubin from their book Deviations, which is a collection of essays, feminist essays about eroticism and a bunch of other things. I read that book for this video essay, but didn't really apply it to a lot of stuff except for this note. And I will come back to this topic in other episodes as well. But Gail S. Rubin says, I am now arguing that it is essential to separate gender and sexuality analytically to more accurately reflect their separate social existence. This goes against the grain of much contemporary feminist thought, which treats sexuality as a derivation of gender. For instance, lesbian feminist thought has mostly analyzed the oppression of lesbians in terms of the oppression of women. However, lesbians are also oppressed as queers and perverts by the operation of sexual, not gender, stratification. Feminist conceptual tools were developed to detect and analyze gender-based hierarchies. To the extent that these overlap with erotic stratifications, feminist theory has some explanatory power. But as issues become less those of gender and more those of sexuality, feminist analysis becomes misleading and often irrelevant. Feminist thought simply lacks angles of vision that can encompass fully the social organization of sexuality. The criteria of relevance of feminist thought do not allow it to see or assess critical power relations in the area of sexuality. In the long run, feminism's critique of gender hierarchy must be incorporated into a radical theory of sex, and the critique of sexual oppression should enrich feminism. But an autonomous theory in politics specific to sexuality must be developed. Do we hear Kimberly Crenshaw and intersectionality in there? Because I know I sure as hell do. If you guys don't know, Kimberly Crenshaw's theory of intersectionality, where race and gender meet. You know, Black women are oppressed because of their race as Black, but also their gender as women. Therefore, they experience different types of oppression, and we have to look at those intersects of oppression in order to fully understand their experience. We cannot just treat sexism as all women. You know, white women are oppressed differently than Black women, differently than Asian women, differently than lesbian women, etc. We're going to bring sexuality into that. I think that there really does need to be a whole other body of thought. I'm sure that there is, and I'm just beginning to come across it, where we talk about sexuality separate of feminist analysis, and not even entirely separate of feminist analysis with feminist critique, but still in the arena of purely sexuality and bringing in all of the other sexualities like perverts and transgender people and gay people and lesbian people and all of that stuff, and men as well, heterosexual cisgender men as well. Sexuality in that arena, we cannot just only look at sexuality from a feminist lens. I think it's extremely limiting, and I think that is why so much of feminist discourse on TikTok feels like a puritanical hellscape right now. So yeah, I'm just going to leave it there. You guys know I'm obviously going to come back to that topic, but I just loved what Gail S. Rubin had to say about that. And I think it directly applies to what Sydney Sweeney was saying, because, you know, she was trying to come for the women, being like, oh, you're comparing my bathwater to Jacob Elordi's, but you loved his, trying to call out the whole like, oh, it's harder for women compared to men situation, like women come after women more. She thought she was making feminist talking points, but it's not, because it's simply not. We're talking about sexuality. We are talking about eroticism and erotic desire. There is nothing to do with sexism, really, that's like playing in here with the difference in between their bathwaters. If anything, Sydney Sweeney is using like gender essentialism, kind of like toxic masculinity talking points when she's like, I'm going to turn you dirty little boys into men, and using her like sexuality and everything like that. Like that's what's going to turn them into men. I think that is like a little bit more sexist and toxic masculinity, like, I don't know, you guys know what I'm trying to say, than what she's claiming is happening to her. Even though I do think that, again, it is a feminist hellscape on TikTok sometimes that feels much more puritanical, but whatever. I also feel like, you know, rage bait is seen in the algorithm more often than not. So also, if all of this talk about violence and transgressions and taboos and eroticism was kind of like depressing to you, and you're looking for like a little bit more hope, specifically in how to maintain like a long-term relationship, maybe you have a long-term partner and you're looking to like increase your eroticism and your desire and find that like appreciation for their state of like otherness and still like be able to love them, because I know that's something that's like really difficult. I'm not in a long-term relationship right now, but I have been in one, and maintaining erotic desire and otherness and not completely merging or feeling the pressure to merge as monogamy in society tells us to do. Definitely check out Esther Perel. I fucking love her, guys. Her book, Mating in Captivity, is really, really good. I wanted to use it more in this episode. I have it and I read it, but I literally can't fucking find it. I think it might be at my parents' house, but it's a really good book. She also has a podcast. And she's on like 1,000 podcasts. Literally search her name and you can find her talking about multiple subjects that have to do with eroticism, love, healthy relationships, desire, long-term relationships, etc. One that I really recommend if you don't want to do your own research or find the book is her TED Talk, The Secret to Desire in a Long-Term Relationship. It's like 12 years old, but it is still so fucking relevant, so fucking good. So definitely check that out, guys. I'll put the link in the description per usual. All right, we have made it to the end of the episode, where I will wrap up with what I'm wet, dry, and still confused about the topic, because it is okay to still be confused. That is how I get new episode topics, by being confused about previous ones. Plus, it is very difficult to understand absolutely everything. I am just broaching a corner of a topic that has been discussed and researched and talked about for thousands of years. So first of all, I am so wet generally about the topic of eroticism. Like, I am deep in a rabbit hole about this, guys, and reading Bataille and reading Han has really helped me in shaping, I think, a new view of what I think So Wet, So Dry is about to become, in the works of having always been becoming. But I think I wasn't really looking at a lot of things in terms of eroticism in the past. I mean, in some episodes, I think we were definitely approaching things from like an erotic lens. Like, we have mentioned eroticism multiple times, but I think I was still looking at sex in a different way. I think reading the philosophy of Bataille and Han has changed a lot in just how I think I will approach things. And also Gail S. Rubin in talking about separating sexuality and feminism, or looking at the intersect of sexuality and feminism. That's something that I think we've been doing here on So Wet, So Dry for a fucking while, but it's so interesting to find it like another scholarly feminist put into language. And I can be like, okay, yeah, we're on the right track, because sometimes I feel insane. But yeah, I'm really excited about that new framework of thinking and having a text to refer back to, multiple texts, because the philosophy as well. As far as dry, I am dry about Sydney Sweeney, guys. Obviously, I mean, the fascist stuff, like, Jesus fucking Christ, like, I feel like, are we canceling people still? Like, people are against cancel. We should cancel her. Like, can it be done? I don't really want to see her face anymore. Like, I don't want to see her in a rom-com. I don't want to see her anywhere. I'm just over her. Like, it's just whatever. Like, and if she wants to keep doing these Dr. Squatch ads, like, I won't be sticking up for her. Other women, if they want to use their sexuality, then we'll have those conversations down the line. But I'm going to simply ignore everything else that Sydney Sweeney does from here on forward, hopefully, because I think she's just kind of irrelevant. She is rage bait. She doesn't understand what she's talking about. She's trying to use feminist talking points and it's bullshit. So yeah, over Sydney Sweeney, but ultimately, like, thanks for the episode topic. Like, shout out to you for that. Everything else, don't really give a fuck about. I am also dry about some of Bataille's work, guys. This is a complicated one and I will be returning back to it I think I'm going to do an episode using Bataille's talk about eroticism, mysticism, and I might bring in magic and the divine feminine in there. I think that's going to be like the next episode that I'm working on. But there's also a good amount of stuff in his work that has been read as sexist and that I was reading in the book like, okay, this is sexist, like certain things about like what the man's job during sex is and the woman's job. Like I was not fucking with that. And even him seeing period blood or menstruation as like a taboo in certain ways. Like, it's like, yeah, I get it. Like in society, it is taboo because of patriarchy. But like, there were certain aspects of like patriarchy that add to this like violence in his theory of eroticism that I'm like, okay, yeah, that's patriarchy. You know what I'm saying? That he wasn't necessarily connecting the dots on. So I'm excited to like delve more into his work and like pull that apart and like put my own ideas and other feminist angles and perspectives like into that. But also a lot of queer theorists have used his work as well. So like he's a controversial person. Like he was not a fascist sympathizer because I was worried about that, like the time period and everything like that. I had to do some research where I was like, okay, like were you chilling with the Nazis? Like, let's make sure I'm not accidentally reading the philosophy of someone like that. But he was very staunchly against that. But he was a little bit sexist. So I'm still working through trying to figure out his theories, like where to separate that stuff in his theory of eroticism. So ultimately dry about that. And the way he writes, guys, his prose is so fucking awful. Like I literally hate the way that he writes. But the concepts are good. So as for confused, I'm confused about two of the things I just talked about. One, Bataille's theories and the sexism of it all, where that plays into things, where the patriarchy exists in some of his theories and pulling that apart. And also the whole sexuality versus feminism thing. As much as I'm like wet and then, or dry and then wet about those things, I'm also confused about them and definitely will continue to build on them in the future. Also a little bit confused why everybody fucking hated Saltburn like so much. Not everybody. I mean, people either loved it or they hated it. And I get the hate, but sometimes I think people just want to hate something because it makes for a better video essay or it makes for a better like TikTok criticism or whatever. Like it sounds smarter rather than just like letting the thing like actually be good or have some sort of value. Like sometimes maybe like you just misinterpreted it. I don't know. And finally, confused as to why are we buying Sydney Sweeney's bathwater soap? Like really? It's sad. We're really starved out here for fucking eroticism. The men are starved for it. They just want that moment of transcendent bliss of continuity so they can bathe with Sydney Sweeney's bathwater soap. I hope they're using it though. Stay clean, stay fucking fresh. All right, guys, that about does it for this episode. If you liked what you watched, please subscribe, like, follow, leave a comment, keep the conversation going. I want to know what you guys think about this episode. Build on the conversation. Like I said, I will be talking about eroticism a lot more in the future, so there's a high chance that something you comment will be used in a future video. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, please rate the podcast and leave a review. It really helps me appear in algorithms so more people can find this content and join the community. Thank you guys so much for watching. I love you so much, and I will catch you in the next episode. Bye.